Some of the kids I played with said, look, I can't be seen with you. My mum might be down in town shopping, and if she sees me with you, I'll get in trouble. We can play together back at school, but I can't walk to the shops with you. So she'd walk off and we'd separate just so that she wasn't seen with me, because her mother didn't want her playing with Aboriginal kids, or as they called us, native kids who lived on the native reserve. Funnily enough, that actually occurred in primary school, and I do remember that actually happening in high school. But by that stage I had learnt and I guess adapted, so I could take that. But a lot of kids would say to me, in accepting me as their friend or accepting my family, oh, but you know, you're okay, your family's okay. And then they would say, you know, well, I don't really consider you to be like them. And saying them meant Aboriginal people. You're not like them, you're better. And we don't consider you to be Aboriginal either. When I was nursing, one of the girls that was nursing at the same hospital was having a get-together on the weekend, and she invited everybody, but she came up to me and she said, look, my dad has a problem with Aboriginals. Do you mind if I tell him that, you know, you're a Maori or you're from New Zealand? And I looked at her and I said, I do. I don't want you to say that I'm Maori. And he'll know. He'll look at me, he'll know that I'm Aboriginal. And I said, and anyway, what are you going to do about your name? My name. My name is Kickett, well-known Noongar name. So I said to her, look, it's best that I don't go. You know, if your dad's got an issue, I don't need to go to your place, sleep over. But she wanted me to, because a bit of pressure from the other girls, I guess. And she said, oh, no. Well, what if I say to my dad that a family of Aboriginals, of Kicketts, adopted you? What she was doing was wanting me to identify as anything other than Aboriginal, because that put her in a better place with the dad. And that was racism, really. And I always felt this horrible sense of, not to be shame, but of anger. And I'd have to control that, because if people were saying to me, well, I don't consider you Aboriginal, I found that to be quite insulting. And it's the same at school, because my parents, especially my father, always said, be proud of you, of yourself, be proud of your culture, you know, don't be ashamed. I know they, again, meaning white people or non-Aboriginal people, will try to make you feel ashamed of who you are and putting us down, but don't. Always be proud and identify as who you are, because it's something to be very proud of. And it was hard. It was hard at school, because you copped all the racism. You know, you went home, and I remember going home and repeating what some boys had sang together for me, and that was, you know, the old song of, you know, nigger nigger, pull your trigger, bang bang bang. There was also when we went to another town on an excursion. I couldn't read because I was in year 1. I couldn't read, and I went to go into the shop, because again I had my lunch money, and one of the older boys said, you're not allowed in here, don't go in, and can't you read the sign? And I looked at him and got a bit anxious, and the teacher came and said, oh look, you come over here. And she actually sat me down at a place where we were sitting, and she says, give me your money and tell me what you want me to get you, I'll go in and buy it for you. And she did that for myself and the other Noongar kids. And the reason that she had to do this was because when I spoke to my sister and I said, look, what are they doing? Why do we have to? And she said, oh, we're not allowed in that particular shop, because it had on the door, the sign on the door said, no dogs or natives allowed. And I always think back on that, and it's funny how they had the dogs above the natives. And it puts us into that category, you know, of what people thought of us, and also the government policies, because we came under the act of, you know, the flora and the fauna. We weren't considered humans. I can say honestly that in the whole of my primary years I really felt comfortable with perhaps, you know, one teacher who I never felt that I was inferior. And I remember looking at that year, year 7, as one of the more happier years of school. And I liked being in his class, and he made me feel good about myself. And I remember him telling me the story of Aboriginal footballers, AFL players, and he also told me that he'd read where one of my ancestors was an explorer with John Forrest. And that's the first time I heard that. I went home and asked my father, and he said yes. So my father told me the story of his grandfather's brother going with John Forrest and exploring and being quite famous as a tracker. And I felt very proud, and it was this teacher who said to me, "So what do you think of that?" He said, "You should be very proud." And so he always encouraged us to be proud of who we were. But I found he was really the only teacher that ever made me feel proud of who I was. I learnt as I moved through school, you got into fights because it would build up, and then you'd lash out in anger. And so my family said to me, "Don't fight at school because, you know, you're not allowed to, you get in trouble." And I said to my mother, "Well, they're calling me names in the school, well, you know, and I want to fight." Then she says, "Well, you can't." So my uncle said to me, "Well, just be smart. Get the buggers outside of school. When school's finished, then do it." And I took his advice quite seriously, and that's what we used to do. I knew how to fight and had a reputation for fighting. But when I got to year 6 and 7, I started to get tired. I thought, well, these kids, you know, are not, you seem to be belting the same ones. And my cousin said to me, "Well, we have to keep belting them because they're all slow learners." But I went home and had a conversation with my mother, who turned to me and said, "Well, if you keep fighting, they're going to keep calling you names. You need to think about a different tactic." So I used a different tactic in the sense that I decided I wasn't going to fight anymore. So when some boys started calling me a black this or a black that, I started to agree with them, said, "Yeah, I am black. I am black. I'm very proud of it too." And I'd smile at them and walk away. And then I realised that it changed things, because the boys would stand there looking at each other and they didn't know what to say, and they hadn't got a reaction from me. The other thing is, when I had this turning point, it also became noted by other Aboriginal kids that I went to school with, and relatives. They were proud of me, they were proud of how I could fight for them. And when I wouldn't do it anymore, certain kids, well, I started to get teased by them, or they say things to me, and they'd even pick fights with me. Not one-on-one, but usually in a group. So I was finding that I was fighting my own relatives, my own Aboriginal people outside of school as well as in school. So I found myself kind of in not being totally accepted in white society or non-Aboriginal society, and also in my own cultural group and community when I made this decision by some of the kids. So it became quite difficult, and I had to deal with this.